to take advantage of what we see as a consumer or customer-facing interface, an individual person exploring this green building world. It's not a substitute or a replacement for any other sort of feedback loop. What we want to see is scores in buildings, scores on websites, scores in this tool, and then consumers can find out that information however they see fit. This one's exciting because it harnesses a lot of the new technology that we're seeing pushed out in the marketplace in other sectors, and we're bringing it to the green building sector. And I want to tee up the policy implications, because think of what this does for a policymaker as they decide whether or not they need to push the needle on their building stock. How are their building codes functioning? How are their green building policies functioning? How are their incentives functioning? Are they seeing progress? Are they seeing movement in the number of buildings and the performance of those buildings? How does this work for cities and states that have decided they want to do disclosure and auditing requirements, a la New York City, and as of yesterday, San Francisco? Those disclosure requirements could be buried on some public sector website. They could be in the building, and they could be in a visual interface that compares them to the best of the best, so that we have all of the information all in one place. So you're not just comparing LEED buildings and green buildings, but you're comparing all buildings, that black hole that Chris talked about. And what about for the design community, the architects and engineers who are evaluating their success in new construction against their peers in the area that they function in? They may look around and find that they're getting stomped in the energy and atmosphere credit because they're not employing an advanced ventilation strategy. They're not familiar with it yet. As we get that granular information into this tool about what measures are used, we get a feedback loop to the designers, so the design of buildings can improve. And then lastly, we have this sort of the building user interface. This is a way that you can find out the building you're in, what is it doing, where is it going, is it improving? It gives you the information to engage with someone who's probably a little inaccessible to you at a starting point. The building operator himself or herself is not necessarily easy to talk to in real terms, and you can now have the information about what the building was designed to do, and maybe eventually you can have, if you're in New York or San Francisco or somewhere else, how it's actually doing. You have the ability to compare for yourself. So we see this as a launching point for so many different possibilities, and really just a feedback loop that's designed to be helpful in so many arenas. So that ties together with what the federal government is doing with the Better Buildings Initiative, with what the Department of Energy is doing in setting the guidelines for how federal facilities are going to disclose their energy consumption. This has implications for all of that. So with that, I'll tee up the conversation and we'll take some questions, and then I guess we'll turn it back over to Stu first.
Chris and Lane, thank you so much. That was a great discussion. In order to get into some of the questions, we're going to dive right in. So we have just encouraged the audience again, in the right-hand corner of your screen, there's a question box. Please type them in. We will relay them to Chris and Lane. So one of the first ones coming in is from Alyssa. Is a town or city, if a town or city wants to use the GBIG tool to keep track of buildings that aren't LEED or third-party certified, can they input the building data?
That's a great question. So we're grappling with that. So the way that we understand it, what we're promoting, and you'll hear more from this in the next month or two, is we want to be able to exchange. We want to. I think it's where my head is. We want to be able to use a GIS framework to allow towns and cities to convey in their information, and some of those types of information. And so we've already partnered with. If I had more time, I could show you Energy Star, Enterprise Green Communities, colleges and universities that are doing programs. We've had a tension between the data quality versus accessibility question, and we're still working that out, to be candid. I think that my preference at the moment is to really work with folks who have some sort of third-party mechanism to ensure that a dot on a map or an area of work represents some real work. And if folks have instituted something like that, it could be as basic as an ESCO project where there's a third party really has responsibility for it happening, or as sophisticated as Enterprise Green Communities with a real apparatus or a lead process. That's what our initial focus is on. We are working to create some tools for people to submit their content on a less formal basis, but it's kind of a second-tier priority because we really want to focus on the landscape of projects where we have confidence that something was done, whether it's Energy Star and energy, whether it's something more specific like a green roof. So we're looking to establish those data connections. That's one thought. It's a really important issue, one that we're really grappling with.
And one thing that I want to make sure that it was clear to everyone, we may have glossed over it a bit, but every Energy Star building that's been certified by EPA is in the tool already.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, actually, those of you who are I don't want to risk switching over to it this second, but if you guys are on gbig.org and there's a button up top that says layers, pull down and you'll see all the Energy Star buildings as little blue symbols on the map.
So we have two issues that Chris teed up. There's the quality control issue, and we don't want someone putting in data that's not true, and then a data operability issue, which is a technical discussion that we have to have with whoever is interested in the tool, and that could be at the state or locality level or the agency level. Those questions have to be ironed out. But if there's someone playing traffic cop and vouching for the quality of the data, we really want it in here. That's exactly how we intend to fill out this application.
Thanks. We have a number of questions coming in from the audience on the impact of the real estate industry. One coming in from Adrian is, how fast do you think new state and city, New York, San Francisco, et cetera, audit and transparency regulations are going to be adopted? How ready is the real estate industry for this?
I can't speak to their readiness. I can speak to the reality in our interaction with most large commercial real estate firms. That they are seeing the writing on the wall, and that this is something that's going to be part of business as usual in the future. When New York and San Francisco, two huge markets, move to do this, it becomes very a lot easier for other areas, other jurisdictions to say, well, why shouldn't we be doing that? And especially when you're just talking about disclosure, when you're really just talking about getting more information out into the marketplace to the benefit of the tenants and owners themselves. There's not much downside. There's not much argument against it. Now, they do have to do work to get prepared for what is a new reality. But maybe it's a self-selection bias. But the commercial real estate firms we're engaged with are improving their buildings. They're using LEED. They're using especially LEED EV as the tool that they process their improvements through. They're moving significant quantities of buildings through the program and making them better every single time. There certainly are firms that are not engaged with us, are not engaged in New York and San Francisco, and are going to have some growing pains, and that's the reality of policymaking and of market transformation.
I think I would build on what Lane said and said, I think this is an international phenomenon. If you look over the last 6 months, while we've been engaged on this, our colleagues in the UK are, if anything, a step further out in front, and so the multinational firms that are dealing with these issues internationally understands this kind of transparency is kind of the bar is rising really fast. And whether it's being done by policy or in different countries, or whether it's being done as a fiduciary issue or a risk management principle, this idea of transparency is really an issue of market efficiency. And the market needs the information to work efficiently. And so what we are trying, I think the arc of this conversation is that increasingly leadership from a green building perspective will have to do with transparency, and it will be harder to maintain a leadership position in the absence of that. Rather than sort of beating people with that, we just want to make that, we want to start putting in place the information systems to make that as easy as possible, as interoperable as possible, and that's what this is about in part.
We have a number of questions coming in on how you reward and incent behavior, and one of them comes from Kathy Broad, USDA Sustainable Buildings Manager, Program Manager. How can excellent performance in, for example, the carbon index comparison, be recognized and rewarded through the system?
Well, that's something that we're dealing with daily, because leadership when no one sees the leadership is not as effective as leadership when it's way out when it's out in the public sphere. And that's why at agencies that are doing this, it's inherently in our intention to play up the successes as loudly as we can, because we need to get that information out. So what GBIG can do is help in one way get that information out to consumers. It's certainly not the other way, and there's certainly a lot of other things that we need to explore doing as USGBC. The industry needs to explore doing cooperatively to reward excellence. And I don't think there's a good just canned answer. I mean, really, when it comes to this type of activity, the more the merrier. We need good ideas on what to do. ideas that we can execute that will be enticing to the folks who are, not receiving them the first time around, but realize that just with a little bit of extra effort, they can get to this level. And whether that's because they want to see the color of their dot change on GBIG, or because they want to be involved in groundbreaking with a super high performance facility that's measured on the carbon metric,